my YouTube viewers. It is Crystal here, and what I'm doing in this video is I'm covering lesson 7 of my course, Beginner's Excel course. And lesson 7 is an introduction to charts, because charts are visualizations. And quite often, if you are giving a presentation, especially a presentation to management, it's better to have a visualization, because managers and executives, they want to see the big picture. And so they don't want to see lots of data. They just want to see the big picture. And that's when you can make a chart. And so what I'm going to do in this course, this lesson, I'm going to show you a few charts that you can make to introduce you to charts. So we've already gone into Excel in the past, and the earlier lessons we showed you how to get into Excel from your Windows, and then we showed you how to open a file, and then so what we're going to do is we're just going to go directly into Excel in this file that we have opened. So I click onto my Excel, and that's going to take me to Excel. So now I'm on lesson 7. I have a tab for lesson 7 where we are going to make a chart. Now, what you do with your charts is you go to the Insert tab, and on the Insert tab, you have all of these charts that you can make over here with recommended charts and different types of charts that you can make. So what I would suggest you do is go to recommended charts, because what that will do is that will take you to the type of chart that Excel thinks would be most suitable for the type of data that you have. So if you look at previous lessons, we've got your month and your total waste cost. And I have anonymized the data by rounding it up or down to the nearest 1,000 pounds. And the reason for that is because obviously I can't use real data. I would get in trouble if I used real data. So I'm just using anonymized data. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to cell A1, and that's your month, and you're going to click onto your month. And then you press the Shift key, and then you press your arrow key, and that's going to, you press your arrow key to the right, and that's going to take you to total waste, and then you press the arrow key down. So you go to the arrow down to the bottom of the data, the last piece of data. So we're going to come over here. You're going to be in Insert, and we're going to come over here to Recommended Charts. And these are some charts that Excel recommends. So I personally prefer this chart, which is a line chart. So we're going to press OK. And then so what we do is we come over here, and you say your total waste cost by pound, and then you have your month. So we've got values from April 24 to April 26. So we've got 2 years worth of values. And you can see with the waste costs by month, the values are slowly decreasing. And you can see that with the data, but you can also see that with the chart. So in April 24, you had 64,000 pounds of waste. And then on April 26, you had 51,000 pounds of waste. And you can see that this chart is de-escalating or decelerating. So from April 24 to April 26, the money that's being spent on waste has decreased, and that's a good thing, because you always want your waste costs to go down. And now we've got some training metrics. And this total waste cost was actually something that I had actually been asked to do in real world, but I have anonymized the data. So rather than giving you the actual data, I've just rounded it up or down to the nearest 1,000 pounds just to anonymize the data. And in this training metrics, that again is also something that I do in the real world, and I do it every week. Now, what I do is a lot more complicated than what I'm showing you here, because what I have to do is green is any training that is completed and is not due for the next 90 days. And yellow is any training that is complete but is due within the next 90 days. And red is overdue. And so basically what I have to do is in the real spreadsheet that I use, I calculate it and I use formulas because in a previous lesson, we actually covered formulas. And so I calculate it and use formulas to calculate that. But since this is just a lesson on charts, I decided that I would just give you the values that these formulas I come up with. And so they come up with 60 green, 50 yellow, and 10 red. And that's just something that I made up. It's completely made up data just for this course. So, come over here, you go into K1, and then you press your shift key and you go to your right arrow and then you go to your down arrow 3 times. And then so we're going to go to insert and you're going to go to recommended charts. And so the recommended charts that we're going to select in this instance is a pie chart, because you always need to know how to use a pie chart. So we're going to come over here. We're going to move our chart. And then you come over here to the little paintbrush, and we're going to come over here to the chart with percentages in it, because I like dealing with percentages. So come over here to text options. Okay. So first thing we'll do is what I wanted to do is I'm gonna undo function. I'm gonna undo it for the time being. And then I'm gonna come over here with training metrics. And then I'm gonna go back to the insert tab, go back to the recommended charts, go back into the pie chart, which is what we want, and it's the pie chart. But I'm not happy with that, so I'm going to do an undo. Come over here to green, 60, and then I'm going to click on, I'm going to use the shift and the arrow keys again, and then I'm going to go back to insert, and I'm going to go back into recommended charts to my pie chart. And here we've got the chart title, and that's what I wanted to see, the chart title. So we're just going to say training metrics under the chart title. So that's our title, training metrics. And then what you're going to do is we want to decide we want to decide what type of chart you want. So you come over here to the paintbrush, and we're going to come over here because I want percentages in there. So now that I've got percentages in there, I want to color code it all. So we're going to click onto the green, double click onto it, click onto your fill, and we want green. And then we want the outline to be green as well. Okay. And then come over here to yellow, and you double click onto the yellow. And when we double click onto the yellow, now we want yellow. You double click again. Yellow again. So you want both the fill and the outline to be yellow. You're going to come over here for red, which is over 2. You double click on that. So you've got green, yellow, red. So green is 60, yellow is 50, and red is over 2. So green is 50%, yellow is 42%, and red is 8%. And so that is going to be the metrics that managers are going to want to see, because what they want to see is they want to see a visualization. They say that a picture speaks 1,000 words, and so you're giving them these metrics. And I have to make these types of graphs every week and every month. And then next week, I'm going to try to get another piece of software on my computer where I work, and I'm going to try to start doing reports with this other piece of software as well, because that's what management wants to see. Management, they only want to see the big picture. They want to see the big figures. They don't, you can say you had 60 green, 50 yellow, and 10 red, but they want to know percentages as well. And it's the same thing with this postage. You know, they want to see that not the postage, the waste. They want to see that the money that you're spending on waste is decreasing. And that's what I've been able to prove with this line chart, that the money being spent on waste has decreased 13,000 pounds. So I've got something else that I wanted to show you. And this really isn't beginner's Excel. It's more advanced than beginner's Excel, but I'm going to go ahead and show it to you anyway. So, because it's something that you're going to need to know, because if you go for a job interview, quite often they're going to ask you if you know how to make pivot tables or if you know how to make pivot charts. So that's what I'm going to do. Even though this isn't beginner's Excel, I'm going to show you how to do it. So if you go on a job interview and they ask you, do you know how to make a pivot table? You can say, yes, I know how to make a pivot table. And the reason why is because I went on a job interview one time and they asked me, did I know how to make a pivot table? And I didn't know how to do it. And I didn't get that job. So that's why I'm showing you. So the first thing that we're going to do is I don't do this a lot, but we're going to click onto Insert tab again. And I'm going to try the pivot chart. I don't make a lot of pivot charts. We'll say a pivot chart and a pivot table. That sounds good. So you click onto Insert, and then you click onto the icon that says pivot chart, and then you pick onto the icon that says pivot chart and pivot table. And I don't do this a lot. I do make a pivot table pretty much every week or every month, but I don't make a lot of pivot charts. So it says choose the data that you want to analyze. So we're going to analyze this table here. And then so what you do is you go to cell A1 and you click on it, and then you type shift, and then you press your right arrow until you get to cost plus VAT £, and then you take the down arrow and you click onto that. So it says you're going to be on lesson 7-1 A1 to E27. And it says use existing data sheet. So this says M5. So we're going to say G5. I don't want M5. We're going to say G. And how about, let's see, G, and how about G1? That's where you want it to go. You want this chart, you want this pivot table to be on cell G1. So we're going to give that a go. You click on to OK. So now what you've got is you've got your pivot table and your pivot chart. So for this particular lesson, what we're going to do, and we're going to make a pivot table and a pivot chart. So we're going to click on postage, invoice, tax date. We're going to click on that. And that's in months. And then we're going to say items posted. And then that's going to be sum of items posted. So you can see here that one, we've got for the postage, invoice, tax date, you can see we've got the row labels for July, August, and September. So what it's going to do is it's going to calculate all the items posted for July, all the items posted for August, and all the items posted for September. And it's going to give you a grand total of 71,400. And then it's going to make you a chart. And this is the chart. So it's giving you, again, all the items posted for July, August, and September. And it's giving you a chart to do that. So what we can do is we can move this up. And then what you can do is you can say, you can come over here and you can say total postage. That's total postage. And then you can come over here and go back to insert. Go to pivot chart analyze. Go to the tab that says pivot chart analyze. And you say field buttons. So it says show report filter field buttons. We don't want that. It says show legend field buttons. We don't want that. It says show axis field buttons. We don't want that. It says show value field buttons. We don't want that. And then so what that does is that takes out all of the field buttons. So what you've done here is we've created a pivot chart, a pivot table for all the items of postage posted, all the items of posted in July, August, and September. And then we've made a pivot chart out of that as well to give you all of the items of posted in July, August, and September, so you can see that. But we can come over here to field buttons again, and let's see what it says when we say hide all. So that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to hide all. And that's the first pivot table and pivot chart that we have made. And so basically, this is easy pivot chart. If you want to do a pivot table, then you could come over here and you could say insert, and you could say pivot table. And then it would say, we'll use a new worksheet in this instance. So we're going to say new worksheet. It says, choose whether you want to analyze multiple tables. I don't want to analyze multiple tables. So you just click OK to let Excel know that you're going to put it in a new worksheet. So we've got, say, pivot. You type here in the tab, because that's lesson 7.1. So you click over here on your pivot table. So you say postage, tax invoice date. You say total items postage. And you can say cost plus VAT. And then so you can do that. And so now what you've got is your total items posted and the cost plus VAT. But let's see, we can make a chart out of that. So we're just going to do undo, undo, undo. And then we're going to delete it. We're going to delete the tab. And we want to delete it. And then so now we're going to try it again. We're going to say insert. Say pivot chart. You can say pivot chart and pivot table. So that's what we want. And then we want it in a new worksheet. So you click on new worksheet and then you click on to OK. So now this is giving you a pivot table and a pivot chart. So I'm going to move this over here. So we're going to say pivot. So you can see it goes with lesson 7.1. So you can come over here, you can say postage invoice date, and you're going to have it in months. And you can say total items posted. And then let's say cost plus VAT. So you can have cost excluding VAT, or you can have cost plus VAT. So we'll just say cost excluding VAT because they'll be able to claim the VAT back. Your VAT is your value added tax, and they will be able to claim the VAT back. So I'm going to say cost excluding VAT. And then so we're going to come over here where it says pivot chart analyze. We're going to go to field buttons and we're going to say hide all. And then that's, you're going to hide all those little labels. You're going to hide all of the labels. So your blue is your sum of total items posted, and your orange is sum of costs plus VAT. So you can see that in August, you posted less items of post, and the cost was less than it was in July and September. And in September, you posted more items of post, and the cost was more than July and August. So you can cover here to click of X. So this is just a really simple, I've shown you how to do 2 pivot chart and pivot tables. I showed you how to do a simple one where you just had the months and the sum total of the items posted, and you just come over here to insert and you go pivot chart and pivot table, and then pivot 7.1 is a little bit more complex because you still have your rows of July, August, and September, but you have the sum of total items posted and the sum of the cost. And so the chart that you have made is a little bit more complex. So let's see what we've covered. We've turned data into sample visuals. We've done that. We've selected data, and I showed you how to create a line chart and a pie chart and a pivot chart that is a bar chart and a complex pivot chart. We'll show you how to add the title here where it says training metrics. So we've added the title saying add title, and we have moved and we have resized the chart. And you move the chart by with your taking your finger pad onto the chart, and with your right finger, and with your left finger check the finger pad, and with your right finger you can move it wherever you want to move it. So that's how you move the chart around. You move the chart around using the finger pad on your computer. And so I've shown you how to do 3 charts: a line chart, a pie chart, and a bar chart. So I think that concludes this lesson, but if you want to practice, you can create a chart showing your expenses by category. So we did my expenses a little while ago, but if you have gone ahead and made an Excel worksheet with your expenses, you can make a chart showing your expenses by category, and then what you can do is that can tell you what percentage of money you spend on each expense. So that concludes this lesson. The next lesson is going to be lesson 8, and we're going to be talking about managing files. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you got something out of this lesson, and I will be communicating with you in the next lesson.